Like many fans, I would love to see a second season for this show that I like so much. I've been reading enough online, on Reddit and other places, to see what people are speculating and hoping for in future seasons. The heartening aspect of this is that there is a book series in existence and there will be source material on which to draw for a future season or seasons of this show. It won't be like, for instance, Game of Thrones, where the author hasn't finished the books and the writers of the show have to work things out themselves. It also won't be like some of those terrible series where there is no source material and so the writers are just making things up and going season to season and degrading the quality of the show as they write because they lose their way. I haven't read the books myself yet. There isn't an English translation in existence. There are, however, detailed summaries of the books that have been prepared by German fans. Some fans have also run the books through Google Translate, so I've started reading a very rough English translation of the first book. It's not fantastic, but it's enough to sort of get the gist of what's happening. In terms of my impression of the books, from what I can gather, the series has vastly improved on the source material. The books themselves appear to be in the genre of young adult, new adult. I originally had a long diatribe all about my opinions about a lot of new adult books, but I feel like that was a pointless tangent, so I've deleted all of that. So I thought I'd go through my list of things that I do not want to see in a second season. I do not want to see a gratuitous love triangle. Some fans want a love triangle with the character of Jude from Oxford. I found Jude to be incredibly boring and bland. Ruby had almost no chemistry with him. She had more chemistry with Alistair, and he's gay. She also had more chemistry with Lydia, and she's not gay as far as I know. So, no, let's not have a love triangle with Jude or some other random guy. The love triangle trope is extremely popular in romance, and there are many people who love it. I've almost never liked it. The love triangle serves a few purposes. It provides manufactured drama if the story doesn't have enough of it already. If the author is enamored of multiple types of male character traits, but they don't all fit within the same person, unless he has some sort of personality disorder, then you get the love triangle. It is very hard to have a male character who is physically perfect, alpha male, extremely intelligent, extremely charming, extremely confident and swaggery, but also sensitive, artistic, introverted, quiet, introspective, and considerate. So the solution in romance stories is usually to have two male characters at different ends of the personality spectrum. Depending on whether you're going with enemies to lovers or friends to lovers trope, the two males in the triangle will serve very different purposes. In a more modern age, frequently the love triangle is resolved by a polyamorous or menage type of solution. I wouldn't be a fan of that from Maxton Hall either. Don't get me wrong, I'm not judging, but I find a polyamorous relationship about as unromantic as a love triangle. The other purpose of the love triangle is so that the male character can demonstrate the jealous aspect of his alpha male personality. The thing is, extreme jealousy is not a trait that I really enjoy in any of my male characters. It is toxic and unhealthy. A guy that is jealous to the point that he is likely to resort to physical violence or extreme verbal violence is likely to be controlling and abusive in a domestic context as well. This is not attractive. This is not romantic. There are a few rare instances where I think that jealousy in a love triangle context might be okay from a storytelling perspective. I'm generally okay with it if the other male is a genuine, viable candidate for romance, and not just a stalking horse designed to further the plot for the main romance. For instance, if the other male causes the main male character to self-reflect on his own shortcomings, a possible realization of why a female character might be better off with the other person. That, to me, is a more healthy thought process for the male. He doesn't give up, but he tries to better himself or improve himself. The other scenario is where the other guy is a jerk, and the main male character is genuinely trying to help the female protect herself. In other words, it's not just about him being jealous and wanting to compete for the affections of the female. For instance, Mr. Darcy warning Elizabeth Bennet off Wickham. He knows that Elizabeth probably doesn't want a bar of him, Darcy, but he still tries to warn her off that Wickham's bad news. It's as much an altruistic gesture as one of jealousy. In terms of a love triangle with a female in the mix, I'm not a fan of that either. So Elaine as a potential source of jealousy does not appeal to me. I really dislike the use of enemy females in romance novels. There are two types. One is the sexually experienced female that seduces the male and so is therefore evil when compared to the virginal heroine. Then there's the type of woman you find in a lot of new adult romances. They are essentially almost exactly the same as the heroine herself. They are physically attractive, sexually active, sexually voracious, and experienced, but for some reason they are cast as the villainous, trampy whore, whereas the heroine is not. It's okay to make bitchy, demeaning comments about the non-female main character as a puck bunny or a groupie or a slut or a whore, but the heroine is for some reason better. They never really make it clear why there's a difference. So for me, it's probably okay to have Elaine still in the mix of the storyline, given that in canon she actually is a former sexual partner of James, but let's not demonize or vilify her. It's also pretty clear to me that he's never really felt any genuine love or affection for her, so it would be weird and annoying if she's brought back into the mix just to make Ruby jealous. I want to take a slight tangent to explore the way females are frequently characterized in these novels. I recently wrote a very scathing review on Goodreads about a hockey romance, which falls squarely in the new adult category. I don't want to call out the book in question, but the remarks apply to a very large number of new adult novels. So this is what I wrote. The way women, other than the female main character and those in her cohort were characterized, made me wince a lot. Based on the way she's written, the main character is well educated, and like all heroines in this genre, she is a 10 out of 10 in terms of perfection in beauty, physical attractiveness, and sexual attractiveness. In contrast, the author writes very disparagingly of Barbie dolls and puck bunnies. These are equally attractive women who also want to have sex with the main male character. But, as is a very common trope in these romance novels, these equally physically attractive and lustful women are written as inferior. They are written as dumb, coarse, oversexed, and cheap. They are usually written as nasty and bitchy, although one of the Barbies in this novel is named Kiki, and she's written in a slightly more sympathetic fashion, although she's written as dim-witted and the butt of jokes and mockery from the two main characters. I can usually ignore this overused trope, but in this novel I found it somewhat distasteful and revolting, given that one of their bonding moments was actually a mean girl moment in which they made fun of and looked down at Kiki without her knowing about it, simply because they were both apparently Kiki's intellectual superior. The main female character herself is full of contempt for the Barbies and Puck Bunnies, and refers to them as Barbies to their face, including once by accident to someone who is the sports agent to the main male character. She calls her Business Barbie. This for some reason is considered okay, even though I would characterize this as being rude, hurtful, and disparaging to others. The first time she does it, she says it to the male character's date or one-night stand, calling her Screaming Barbie. And even though the woman herself calls this out as rude, both the main characters shrug this off, because they're too busy eye-fucking one another to care that the main female character has just disparaged the main male character's companion. Male characters in new adult novels tend to be written in a very generic manner. He is rich, oversexed, and well-muscled. Think of a giant, muscly penis with a lot of cash. The sports romance hero has, to a certain extent, assumed the mantle of the alpha male hero from the old bodice-ripping days, now that such bodice-ripping is not politically correct anymore. I find it kind of disgusting that, like many sports heroes, particularly hockey heroes, he treats the majority of women with complete and utter contempt. It's always supposed to be romantic and wonderful and heartwarming that such heroes treat most women with contempt and as nothing more than a convenient sleeve for their penis. And the only women who are exempt from such contempt are relatives, mothers and sisters, friends of teammates, some of whom are elevated to being tantalizingly off limits, for instance, the coach's daughter, teammate's little sister, etc., and the main female character herself. Somehow, we are supposed to applaud and respect the hero for being a complete sexist douchebag to the majority of the female population, except to the woman who is the one, because the main female character is so special and the hero wants to spend time with her and not just have sex with her. This is such a common trope, and the redemption and reformation of a rake is so much easier to accept and handwave when the heroine herself does not treat other women with such blistering contempt. I read romance for fun and for escapism, and usually escapism means that the main characters are unrealistically nicer and better than the average person. One of the many problems with the novel that I'm writing about in this review is that the two main characters honestly came across as being not particularly admirable or even nice human beings. I did not care about their fate. I did not like them. So that was a review of a recent New Age novel that I read, and it describes a lot of what I don't like in modern romance. So I'm really hoping that Maxton Hall stays away from that completely. The second thing that I don't want in a season two is that a lot of people are convinced that Percy is related to James. I hate this idea so much. I like the found family trope. I hate the idea that the only reason that someone like Percy is nice or kind to someone like James is that they're related by blood. Surely people know that blood does not guarantee being kind to someone or even loving them. It is extremely common that domestic helpers who spend so much time with their charges end up taking the role of surrogate stand-in parent to children. I feel like it cheapens and diminishes the very beautiful relationship between Percy and James to have them be related, i.e., that James is somehow Percy's secret bastard child following an illicit affair with Celia. So, yes, I'm really hoping that season two does not go there. And I know that some people might be saying, well, canon doesn't have that. But when Maxton Hall was released, pretty much only Germans had read the series. By the time a season two comes out, a lot of people will have read the book. A lot of people will know what to expect. So the showrunners will be trying to throw some surprises into the mix. I hope this isn't one of them. In terms of what else I do not want to see in season two, I also don't need to have a scenario where we discovered that Mortimer murdered Celia. He's already on the cusp of being a melodramatic, moustache-twirling villain. The actor's talent has saved him from this, but really only just. So let's not have it be the case that Mortimer murdered Celia, please. Finally, this last one is going to be extremely hard for the cast and the crew, but I really do not want the cast and creators to be adversely influenced by the unexpected huge popularity that the show has received. I don't want them to try to make it more like an American series. For me, there's a reason Maxton Hall has resonated so much. It's different from other very similar offerings, and that's a good thing. Let's let the American series be the American series. They can exist for their fan base, and they have their pros and cons, and they're their own thing. I've pointed this out in other videos that I've made, that some of the recommendations for similar shows have made me groan, because I feel like people are incorrectly focusing on the enemies to lovers, rich boy, poor girl trope, the pretty people, the hot sex scene. Those are not the things that have set Maxton Hall apart. Those elements exist in not just many, but pretty much all of the shows and movies that are teen romantic dramas. Those elements in themselves do not make a good show or make a good movie unless there are other critical elements in the mix. As I've pointed out in some of my other videos, I feel like if people like the spirit of Maxton Hall so much, then they're better off being pointed towards things like Austen, Georgette Heyer, L.M. Montgomery, BBC's North and South, because those are the shows or those are the properties that capture the aching restraint, the longing, the romance, the genuine affection and regard, and the conversations that take place instead of having sex scenes in lieu of a decent bit of communication between the two leads. There is such a danger that the popularity of the show is going to mean that they will feel pressured into turning themselves into a bland copy of everything else that's already out there. The show is already treading such a fine line because it's very much a trope-laden show. But as I said, the reason it's different is that it does the tropes really well. It subverts them sometimes. Sometimes it gives you exactly what you want, but it does it well. It is sincere, and the acting is done really well. The other thing that concerns me is that the actors are going to have to navigate the overwhelming and heady implications of fame. When I first started checking out the show and looking at the actors on social media, they only had a few thousand followers on Instagram. Now, Harriet has more than 480,000 followers. Damien's gone beyond 1.1 million subscribers. Aside from the fact that they are now going to have to deal with that, there's also the tension around the fact that clearly Damien has stolen the show as the internet's current boyfriend. A very fickle title and honour. The internet's rapacious and intrusive thirst can be very fleeting, and he runs the real risk of being typecast into these pretty boy, bad boy, rich boy roles, and not being able to rise beyond his initial Maxton Hall role. Previous internet boyfriends that I could think of are listed as follows, and some of them, but not all, have managed to transcend their internet boyfriend status. James Masters as Spike, David Boreanaz as Angel in Buffy, Jason Dohring as Logan Eccles from Veronica Mars, Oscar Isaac as Poe Dameron after The Force Awakens, Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy after Pride and Prejudice, Richard Armitage as Mr. Thornton after North and South, Regé-Jean Page as the Duke in the Bridgerton series, McDreamy and McSteamy from Grey's Anatomy, Wentworth Miller as Michael Schofield from Prison Break, Hugh Grant after all of his romantic comedies, Sawyer from Lost, Orlando Bloom after Lord of the Rings, George Clooney as Dr. Doug Ross in ER, David Tennant after Doctor Who, of course Robert Pattinson as Edward Cullen in Twilight. There may also possibly be tension and resentment with the James Beaufort character stealing the show. Sarah Michelle Gellar seemed to resent James Masters' popularity as Spike. She did her best to try to torpedo the Buffy and Spike ship. Whether you liked it or not, it was the case that it was very popular among the fans, and I know that she didn't like that, and probably neither did the showrunner. I know Kristen Bell and the creator of Veronica Mars didn't like Jason Dohring's popularity, and they certainly, till the very end, hated the Veronica and Logan ship, even though I would argue that that was one of the show's most popular selling points. I know that Claire Danes and the showrunners of Homeland did not seem to like the huge popularity of Rupert Friend's Peter Quinn character, or his extremely magnetic chemistry with Carrie Matheson. On a purely trivial note, I've realised that I've been mispronouncing Damien Hardung's name. So that poor guy, he is probably going to have to give up with having the press call him by his real name, which is Damien. He is going to have to resign himself to a life of being called Damien. So, negativity aside, what do I want to see? Based on what I've read, it sounds as though there's a lot more emphasis in the later books on the secondary characters, with Ruby and James kind of taking centre stage again in book 3. I would like to see a situation where Ruby and James continue to be the main pairing and characters, but we get to have more screen time with a lot of the other characters as well. I particularly like Lin Wang and Kieran. I like Ember, even though I know that not everyone else does. I enjoy the friendship between Alistair and James a lot and would like to explore that more. I also like the Bell family. I know that Lydia and Sutton are a canon pairing in the book. For their pairing, I would actually like to see a change. I find it a bit creepy that the book seems to romanticize the teacher-student pairing so much. For me, it makes it worse to say, oh, they met before he was a teacher at Maxton Hall. He wasn't my teacher then. That's still gross to me because all that means is that she was even younger when they met and they hooked up. I don't find their relationship or their pairing romantic. For me, the forbidden love student-teacher trope isn't romantic. So I am more than happy for them to deviate from canon in order to tell a better story that might resonate more with the 2024 sensibility. I also want the series to have a logical end. So whether it's 2 seasons or 3 seasons, I'm not too fussed. So for instance, I could be quite happy with even just 2 seasons that combine all of the books but maybe more episodes. Or they continue with 2 seasons of 6 episodes each, that's fine as well. But I want them to tell the story, I want them to tell them fully, and I want them to tell them well. And then I want the series to end. I do not need a scenario in which they drag on Maxton Hall for 15 seasons to such a point where it's no longer plausible that these people are still in school, to such a point where we are so sick of these characters and the storyline that we no longer like season 1. So I think it would be much, much better if they actually finish the series. And if it's so popular that people don't want to let go of this world, that's fine. Do spin-offs. Maxton Hall Jr., Maxton Hall, A New Generation, explore what Ruby and James do after the books. That's fine. But do it in a different series and leave Maxton Hall as a self contained series. So I hope that none of that was too controversial. They're all very much my own personal view. I have been enjoying myself exploring possibilities and alternatives within fan fiction. I'll put a link in the information section just in case other people are interested in taking a look at the fan fiction that I've written for this fandom. But yeah, those are my hopes for future seasons of Maxton Hall. It'd be great to hear what everybody else thinks. One thing I did want to point out, as you may have seen, I'm not actually a YouTuber. I'm pretty low tech, and this channel has a lot of other crap in there, not just Maxton Hall. There's stuff about my Swedish Ankerstrom stand mixer. There are songs that I've generated on Suno. This was just a place for me to discuss things that I really enjoy right now. Part of the reason I was doing it was that I really couldn't see a lot else out there that was discussing this show in a way that I wanted to. Tumblr's great for the pretty. Reddit is great for initial reactions. These days, YouTube is the place that I go to for more detailed reviews, analysis, and reactions. I have found a couple of reaction videos that I thought were done very well that added to the narrative and the discourse, and where the host was articulate and expressed things in a way that I enjoyed. But I really, really don't enjoy the kind of abbreviated, semi coherent, barely articulate thirst and almost grunting at the screen that a lot of the other videos about Maxton Hall have been. There was one video that I watched that was just so unbearably incoherent, loud, chaotic, and annoying that I actually couldn't finish it. I know that my approach is like really low key and boring, but I have really, really appreciated the comments that I've been receiving and the engagement that I've had. It's actually exactly what I could have hoped for. So it's a very small volume of people. You know, if you're listening to this point, I'm shocked because I think most people fall away within the first minute. But if you've got to this point, you're probably exactly the kind of person that I was hoping to reach and to communicate with. So thank you.